Hello! It's me! Hi! I'm the Diligence guy. And today I'm coming to you from my old alma mater. This was one of the best times in my life. I learned absolutely nothing about the blockchain here. And yet, it prepared me to work in this field better than I could have ever expected. Obviously, spending a few years surrounded by teenagers and people in their early 20s in a highly concentrated way is effectively just the current experience of working in blockchain. But I wanted to invoke another YouTuber and get it a little bit more classy and professorial. I'm a big fan of Mini Minuteman. What he does is he debunks archaeological theories, long hair and a blackboard. I'm here to debunk a little different myth. Everyone says that when you go to a school like Harvard, the real value is not what you know, but who you know. And I'm here to tell you that it's obviously both. The topic of today's talk is how to do diligence on a team. How do we know what we know in terms of the people involved? Are the people good? Do they work together well? Are we going to end up with a team that has stayed together or breaks up like a mid-80s rock band in the middle of their big success? Are the people ready for the tribulations of money? Are they ready for a market shift? How are they going to deal with each other if they have to be close together in close quarters for an extended period of time? Basically, are they a good team? So, what I studied here is psychology and economics. It's fascinating. At the time, there was no such thing as behavioral economics. They really liked the number of people that was somewhere too big for psychology and somewhere too small for economics. Let's say a couple hundred. That kind of science lends itself to organizational behavior, and it lends itself to a very human approach to science. Yes, there's numbers, yes, there's studies, but they're kind of gooey. God. You know, my favorite thing was we would run these experiments on like the market for lemons, for example, or market for commodities, or we would have a room of 100, 200 people, students obviously, that would be trying to wrestle against each other from a very rudimentary stock exchange behind a little screen. And there was so much beauty in that. We would be building algorithms to try to see if we could win the prisoner's dilemma. We would, create these little trading engines. Ultimately, when I got out in the big world and did a little bit of diligence in private equity, I thought, wow, these really big companies are so complex but still understandable. And then I got the crypto and I was like, oh, you can just like put a picture online and just make $4 billion. Right. This is not what I expected. And in that kind of context, when you're trying to invest in, let's say, a small crypto project that might be the next Dogecoin or might be the next Chainlink, what you're looking for is obviously the value, but putting that aside, you're looking at a team of people who have, by definition, not done this before because this is a new company. So how do you judge their ability to do the thing they haven't done, wherein that is the value that you're investing in? Well, we start with cohesiveness. And I'm going to go over these 4 principles: cohesiveness, competency, completeness, and experience. So if you're looking at these 3 C's over here, look, and I made a spelling mistake. See, even the diligence guy can make mistakes. Remember, note your mistakes. Now, cohesiveness, competency, completeness, and experience. I haven't seen a very good checklist of what to judge a team for, so I wrote this one. And the reason why I wrote it starting with cohesiveness is because you could have the most brilliant people But if they can't work together, then you're going to fail, period. I've seen most companies that fail really, really early fail because of lack of team cohesiveness. You're not really in an environment where people are necessarily getting paid yet, or the idea is very young and the excitement can kind of die from a day to the next. You're going to see this very often after hackathons, right? Somebody might win some money and then everybody's really excited. And it's a bad time to be betting on that company right after they won the hackathon because they themselves might not know how cohesive they are, right? That little bit of money might push them to really do things they wouldn't have otherwise, but it's really, really, really risky. Really, really, really risky. And when teams just win hackathons, they tend to be very excited. So they might not be very willing to give you an advantageous valuation because they're still very excited. So what you're looking for is a team that can actually show you that they have a level of experience, right? They have built something together. Either they worked on a project in the past, either they're friends, or they've at least been at this for a good enough number of months that there's some forward product. You can see, a good deck that shows like it's had a lot of work put into it, a good white paper, a good way of identifying for themselves really what their strengths and weaknesses are and how they like to play ball together. One of my favorite things in practice to do is to ask them for larger meetings with more team members, and that's basically when we were raising last. That was our situation, and one thing that I really like about working with teams that are already presenting in a bigger context, like there's 3, 4, 5 people, is that you can see how they effectively maneuver around each other. Right? How are they going to take a problem that you're giving them, right? What if this happens? What if this happens? And then say, oh, you answer this, Dylan. You answer this, Mike. Right? Basically, are their leadership qualities clear? And are they being leaders to each other? Right? Is there a sense of like, oh, my tech guy's gonna love to answer your tech question. Hey, my marketing guy's gonna love to answer your marketing question. Is there that sense of mutual admiration and mutual support, right? Because times do get rough, and they will inevitably, especially if the company is successful and lasts for a while. So that level of mutual admiration, I think, is important because, you go quickly from mutual respect to mutual resentment once things go wrong. So you're better off going from mutual admiration to just mere mutual respect. Second, competency. Speaking of the respect. So, what do you respect? Well, you respect the skill that somebody has in their field. And this is a type of ego that you'll see a lot, at places like Harvard, where people are smart, they're proud. There's definitely a level of pride in your past accomplishments, but without a level of arrogance about your future accomplishments, because they haven't happened yet. That is something that is going to be very difficult to find in entrepreneurs, because part of the gig is, in and of itself, to be delusionally convinced about a utopian future, utopian for specifically you and your company winning. It is a part of the shtick, and it does accomplish some things. It becomes a source of charisma and a source of energy in tough times and a source of energy in good times that, rises people up, raises more money. So the delusion has to be there to some extent. But is there competency underneath that? Is the tech guy who's going to tell you he's done in 3 months be done in 6 months like he should, or is he actively delusional and it's going to take him a year? Right? It's normal for the entrepreneurs to bullshit you and tell you they're going to do things in 6 months when it takes a year. That's fine. You should be sitting there in your corner, jotting it down and doubling all the estimates that they give you. However, it is not okay for them to be off by 75%. Right? Like, only Elon can get away with saying things are going to be ready next year for 10 years in a row. Don't be Elon. I mean, were you born with that much money? No, then your options of being Elon, I would say, are pretty limited. Be smart and steady. Sorry. Anyway, I wanted to also bring up that competency is not just a matter of how do I put this? It's not a consistent approach to competency that will get you the best team, because a varied approach to competency is required in a varied team. We're looking for executives, we're looking for leaders. So are you a great engineer? You should be, you're CTO, but are you also a great leader? You know, the second best engineer with the best leadership characteristics is going to make a better CTO than the best engineer. Because ultimately the gig is to scale and to work yourself out of a job. You might be a working engineer in the very early stages of the company where you're actually getting your hands dirty building the technology, but the idea is to let go of that over time. And I've seen companies that fail because the CTO is too involved and too unwilling to share the project, to share responsibility, and ultimately to delegate. And so that refusal to delegate can be just as deadly as incompetency in leadership, right? Again, leadership is more than just a technical skill. On the CEO side, I wanted to talk about why CEOs are very difficult to evaluate, but at the same time, very sort of easy. The CEO's job is to sell three things. It's to sell the vision to the investors, it's to sell the dream to the team, and to sell the product to the customers. So ultimately, it's a sales guy, just more so than most sales guys, right? Your regular sales guy should be going out at least 3 days a week. He should be smiling at everybody that he meets in the street. He should just naturally be talking to 200 people a day, even if he's not selling anything, right? That's a good sales guy. Your CEO also needs to be behind a desk sometimes. They need to be able to handle complex, multivariate topics. They need to be excellent at delegating. You know, you really want to have that kind of, I don't know, but I'll get back to you answer from the CEO as often as possible, especially early on. Too much confidence is indicative of potentially making mistakes and not realizing their mistakes, right? You want somebody who's definitely drank the Kool-Aid, but like not all of it. You want somebody who drank 80% of the bottle of Kool-Aid and still has enough non-delusional neurons firing that they understand that, you know, this isn't school anymore. I'm not doing this for a grade. The world is a big and scary place, and the market might turn. My team member might get hit by a bus. You know, my investors might get mad at me. There's all of these different things that can happen that are objectively not your fault, but that you should be worried about. And it doesn't sound sexy to say, you know, worry like a Russian grandma watching her kids go off to war, and that's definitely not the vibe that you should have. Again, professorial. Let us be demure about our worry. You should be able to have confidence even in the most dire of circumstances, right? That's a good CEO. But it's also somebody who's able to slow down and see where the road is leading him astray, or her, and pivot. And I think that's not something that's very well asked in these kinds of interview questions and diligence. I usually see people talking about that CEO is very confident, they've got a following, less about, hey, I feel like they're arrogant. And I know they're arrogant, they're CEOs, right? Like that's kind of part of the job. But I wish the investor community was a little bit more wary. I think with the market now, people are absolutely wary. But I'm encouraging you not to forget that in, you know, a year or whenever the bull market does in fact return. Now, next thing, completeness. I was touching earlier that the sales guy needs to be a different kind of guy than your engineer. Your engineer should not be going out every day and talking to 300 people. He's an engineer, right? That's your CTO. So completeness means having enough of the right types of talents in a way that maintains the cohesion, right? So what do I mean by types of talents? Like basically your basic C-suite, right? Just where's your CEO, your COO, your CFO, your CMO, your CTO, your CCO if needed, right? Maybe a CSO. Like, who is in charge of strategy? Who is in charge of product? Who is in charge of design? That includes, to me, copy and like, what's the outbound communication going to look like? What's the financials going to be? If it's a financial company, that's core. If it's not a financial company, that should be somewhere in there. Like, I see a lot of our enterprises that don't have even an interim CFO or just like a good enough accountant that they could really say, hey, somebody's really watching how we're spending this money. Like, who's your controller? That's important. Your marketing people need to be empowered. That's different than design. You need to know when you're going to go out to actually push the product. And I would say do some market research. I see a lot of companies that are really going out to product and to the market without really having done enough extensive market research. And then they pay way more in marketing the wrong way and then having to pivot than you would have in just doing some market research and adjusting the strategy accordingly, right? That goes back to the arrogance thing earlier. You don't know what the market is. You think you do, great. Remember, it's just a thought, and remember to substantiate that thought with evidence. Finally, experience. Now, I'd say you have a fairly complete team, right? But it's a team of students, right? Now we're a bunch of 22-year-olds. We're all green. We work together really well. We all live in the same dorm. We're super competent. We all like started school at 16 and did theoretical physics and super competent, right? And we've got one Pokemon of each type. We got our air, we got our water, we got our electric, whatever, right? Like, we got our finance guy, we got our marketing guy, we got every guy. Team is not experienced. And you often see these teams having a good, excitable idea, and they can't really make it. Right? The Facebooks, the Microsofts of the world are the exception of the rule. The majority of companies, just by number, that are successful that last like more than 4 or 5 years, are founded between people between the ages of 35 and 40. Right? So that's really kind of your main study to disprove, at least statistically, that thought that all entrepreneurs are in their early 20s. Now, inversely, if you're coming at a field like blockchain, I've seen this type of failure mode as well, and it's a bunch of investment bankers, and they're like, these kids are making billions of dollars. They don't know anything about what's going on. We'll show them. Great. Also wrong answer, because they don't know about all the kids things. Right? The right answer is a hybrid. So experience can sometimes mean the kind of experience that only young people can have. Being a Web3 native, being an online native, really. Like, how much time have you spent on, weird forums on Reddit and on YouTube and TikTok and like that? That takes time and is a generational and cultural thing. And I think, especially if it comes to a field like Web3 or something that's more retail focused, right? If I were in fashion or, some sort of like social network, I would deeply care that at least somebody on the team is young enough to know what the kids are up to these days. However, what I would prefer is to have a mixture of younger and older people. Right? On the older side, I would also say that this obsession I hear sometimes with making sure that the entrepreneurs have a previous IPO, that they have big exits, I also find that can be a little bit misleading. Is the person who you're interviewing the person who made that IPO happen, or were they just a lucky participant in the right project? Right? Did they contribute to the right team? Not denying the contributions, just asking, were the contributions necessary? And even better, were they sufficient? Or is this the founder that you're getting? Or is this somebody who's been an engineer in a very good team? I mean, they're both valuable, but I just want to make sure that that investors aren't selling themselves on a dream that the employees are selling themselves, right? Like, if they're working with each other, they should be impressed with each other. You should not. you should be trying to be unimpressed and just picking the best out of what is just almost certainly an unimpressive pile, right? If the whole pile is impressive, you're too easily impressed, right? Make yourself less impressive. Otherwise, you're not going to be a good filter, right? So I think that level of meritoriously validating experience, where the biggest experience that you're looking for is startups. Right? Have they taken something from 0 to 1? Have they worked with teams in a time of chaos? And have they been able to withstand major, shocking events? Right? Did the market turn during our last startup? Good. What did they do? How did they get out of it? You know, did they manage to sell when times were good or sell when times were bad? Right? How valuable and how many people have that same experience, right? If it's somebody who's got a PhD in computer science, great. How many people have PhDs in computer science in this field? Is this a competitive field? Is this somebody who's really kind of alone at their level of expertise? And I mean that from the sense of, you know, just digging a little bit deeper, right? Like not just, oh, this thesis seems really cool, just taking the time to Google, like, how many people have done a thesis in quantum computing in the last 2 years? Oh, fucking everybody? Because that's the thing that like pays the most now? Great, so that means that the relative fungibility of somebody in, say, quantum computing is high. I don't know that it is the case, by the way, I'm making it up, I just assume it's the case, because everyone's talking about quantum computing, so I would assume, but I have not, in fact, done my diligence. I'm sorry, I don't do it for everything. Anyway, with that, I wanted to conclude and thank you, because over the last couple of videos, there's just been this absolutely fantastic reaction. You guys are great. I feel very privileged to be a part of this Web3 community, and I want to encourage you all to continue sending me messages, to like, to subscribe, and to continue suggesting what topics we could cover. Because this is one of the most fun experiences I've had in my life. And sharing all of these thoughts is, it just warms the heart, quite frankly. I love that this is useful to some of you. I'm going to try to make the productions a bit better. I'm going to try to put more effort into writing. And I want to thank you so much for taking this journey with me. Stay diligent, everyone.